Welcome back to Novara Live, which is once again not live because our streaming system cannot cope with this heat, and we are yet to move into our new studio with full air conditioning. We have a treat for you today, though. I have an interview with Jeremy Corbyn, former leader of the Labour Party, and we discuss a new book he is releasing on his tribunal into the Gaza genocide, and we spend the first part of the interview discussing Andy Burnham and Keir Starmer. Will they be any different? Is Andy Burnham more than just Keir Starmer with nice eyelashes and a black t-shirt, as Kemi Badenoch called him? And of course, Jeremy Corbyn has worked closely with both of them. Andy Burnham was Shadow Home Secretary when Corbyn was leader of the Labour Party, and Keir Starmer was Shadow Brexit Secretary until, of course, he became Labour leader. It was a very interesting conversation. I should also say we'll be putting out another segment over the weekend, so there is more Novara Live for you coming up. We should be back in our studio next week and resume normal service. For now, this is my interview with Jeremy Corbyn. Jeremy Corbyn, thank you so much for joining us again on Novara Media. Always great to have you on. We're going to start by talking about who is likely to be the next Prime Minister, Andy Burnham, and whether or not he's anything more than just the new Keir Starmer with a nicer smile. You've worked with both of them extensively. Andy Burnham when he was Shadow Home Secretary, Keir Starmer when he was Shadow Brexit Secretary, both under your leadership of the Labour Party. What's your take on this? Do you see them as relatively interchangeable or quite different people?
No, they're very, very different characters in a lot of ways. At a personal level, Keir Starmer is quite buttoned up and not very communicative, whereas Andy Burnham is the opposite of that and congenial to chat to and has a quite wide range of interests, which is good. Starmer, we all have got to know Keir Starmer's character quite well, and what's been, how should I put it, theatrically amusing in Parliament this week has been the way that Burnham arrived with a helicopter escort for his train, comes into Parliament and has this massive photo call for Labour MPs who are literally running through Westminster Hall to make sure they were in the shot. These are people who only a few days ago were declaring they're all for Keir Starmer. It's been sort of kind of weird theatre going on all around, and I'm not quite sure where this is going to end, but it seems to me the sadness of it all is that there's no analysis going on of either the economic, social or moral failings of the government under Keir Starmer, or any real discussion about what policy changes Andy Burnham may or may not bring in. And if you leap onto your computer, you'll find that the Daily Mail and the Daily Express that pop up through their presumably very well crafted algorithms will tell us exactly what they think he's going to do. And in the absence of any political statements, then this becomes almost a sort of fictional reality of what's happening. So I just wish there was a serious debate about political directions, and that so far has not happened. I also find that outside of Parliament, the public are seeing it as a sort of theatre rather than anything that's got much to do with them. It's like they're all spectators in their own future. It's not healthy. There ought to be a proper political debate, and that would be best served if there was a contest. Now, I'm not in the Labour Party, so it's not my business whether there's a contest or not, but it does seem a little strange that we're going to get a new Prime Minister coming in without any opportunity for anyone to ask that person to set out their stall. Now, it might be Andy Burnham has some really good stuff, and one of the rumours I heard last night, which actually pleased me quite a lot, was that he was going to go big time on devolution to English regions, which is something I would support, and I think he's probably very committed to, and that would include moving government offices, resources and facilities to Manchester, Newcastle, and so on. I agree with that. I do think we're an over-London-centric country, but that of itself doesn't deal with the fundamental issues about poverty, inequality, and injustice in our society, the routine attacks that are being made on our civil liberties by successive pieces of legislation initiated by Keir Starmer, and of course the disgraceful complicity in the genocide in Gaza. So there's a lot to discuss, and I hope that discussion actually does take place.
I mean, obviously, issues such as Gaza weren't in the manifesto. There will be some sort of issues related to the economy, taxation, nationalisation, and the like, where Andy Burnham might feel restricted in how radical he can be because Labour stood on a manifesto which was, quite small C conservative at the last general election, and he might feel unwilling to go too far from it. Do you think that we need a general election instead of a leadership election if Andy Burnham's to take over?
This is something that comes up quite a lot by public on the street, having a general election. I think it's extremely unlikely as of this moment, but then of course if Andy Burnham becomes Prime Minister and feels that there is a chance of him winning a general election, he might go for one early, but it is less than 2 years since the last general election, and I would have thought it'd be better if the government says actually what it intends to do under him. Now, as I understand it, he's likely to become Prime Minister if there's no opposition at the end of July, just after Parliament rises for the summer recess. So he'll then have until September before he faces any parliamentary scrutiny. And that is very unusual for an incoming British Prime Minister to get a chance to sort of bed themselves into office. I can't think of any other occasion when that's happened before, including when there's been a change of Prime Minister when the party's in government. Think back to the previous Tory changes. There was immediacy, and also, of course, the handover between Blair and Brown, and now the handover from Starmer is going to be a much slower affair, which gives Burnham the chance to at least get all his appointments in place beforehand.
And I just want to go back again briefly to Andy Burnham's time when he was working under you, because in a way he set out so little about what he believes. Everyone's coming in and saying, well, this is the Andy Burnham I knew. And under you, he was Shadow Home Secretary. Actually, one of the few sort of members of, or people in the Labour Party who weren't explicitly from your wing, who didn't resign in 2016 during the chicken coup, which some people have said shows that, he is an honest broker. Other people suggest the only reason he didn't resign in 2016 was because he wanted to be Greater Manchester Mayor and knew that meant that he would need Labour members to think he was, a loyal team player. I remember when he was in that job, there were lots of suggestions. He just says whatever people want to hear and has a big ego. But you'll obviously know a lot better than me. So I suppose, could you give us a bit more flavour? What was he like to work with? And what do you think your experience with him sort of informs your assessments about what he would be like as a Prime Minister?
Well, we were together in the leadership contest in 2015. He was already established as a candidate and had the required number of nominations, some of which came from the left, but not very many. Most came from the sort of centre-right of the party. The more right-wing candidates were Liz Kendall and Yvette Cooper. He debated with me on, 45 occasions, so we got to know each other's speeches quite well. At a personal level, we've always got along quite well, and he is therefore a much more pleasant person to deal with than many others. Did we disagree? Yes, we disagreed on quite a lot of things. Nuclear weapons, defence policy, and to some extent on public ownership, but not completely. And then I'd said all through the leadership campaign that I would offer positions to the other candidates in the shadow cabinet. I would offer them all positions, and I did. I phoned them up that day and offered them all positions. Yvette Cooper said no. She wanted to chair of Home Affairs Select Committee. Liz Kendall said no, but was gracious that I'd asked her. And Andy said yes, he would, but he wanted to know what was on offer and what the position was, and so on, which is, I suppose, reasonable. Anyway, we agreed that he would be the Shadow Home Secretary. He was in Shadow Cabinet, took part in quite a lot of debates. We disagreed over the question of the Syria bombing vote, which took place in November 2015, when I eventually, after consulting party members, gave my view that we should not be involved in this American-led operation, but there was a free vote anyway, and he voted the way he did on that. He then told me in 2016 that he was thinking about running for Manchester Mayor, and we talked quite a lot about the powers of the mayors and devolution and so on, which we largely agreed on, and then he decided he would run. Now, he didn't obviously take part in the coup. He wasn't any of those that resigned over that period, but then he was obviously keen on becoming Manchester Mayor. So motives, you'll have to ask him, but he did behave in a decent way within the Shadow Cabinet, which is a lot more than can be said for many other people. And so I don't hold any gripe against him over that. When he didn't agree with me, he said so, but he said so in a polite way. So I can kind of live with people that at least have some respect for political debate. The period of the coup was clearly well prepared and well coordinated, and was designed to try to remove me as the elected leader of the party. Keir Starmer has gone through a coup against him. The difference is that Keir Starmer at no stage looked to the Labour Party members or union supporters to support him. He didn't do that. He framed the whole thing within the orbit of Parliament, the Parliamentary Labour Party, and the Cabinet, whereas as far as I was concerned, I'd not been elected by the Parliamentary Labour Party. They passed a motion of no confidence in me, which I noted, and then said, well, whatever the result, I will take my case to the party members, and I did, and I won re-election.
Are you surprised at the sort of extent of the campaign against Ed Miliband becoming Chancellor? Because obviously, he's on the left of the party, but he's nowhere near John McDonnell, for example. And lots of people are coming out saying you can't appoint this guy. The right-wing papers, one might expect, I've found Unite and the GMB sort of saying, well, Unite especially saying he'd be a noose around the neck of job creation in the country, quite extreme. I wonder what you're sort of making of this process.
I think it's quite shocking, actually, that first of all, people should say he's not fit to do the job. Clearly, Ed Miliband has a great deal of knowledge and experience, but I take it as a sort of cipher for this consensus of the centre and right in British politics, that we've got to ditch the whole environmental agenda in favour of more drilling for gas and oil, more reliance on fossil fuels, less investment in sustainable energy, and the continued attack by Reform and the Tories on the very notion of sustainable energy and alternative energy sources. And so we're into a sort of right-wing backlash against the issues of sustainability. I just ask them to think what they're saying for a moment. Are we seriously saying there is nothing happening to our planet? Are we seriously saying we can carry on with this degree of emissions into the atmosphere and destruction of the natural world and biodiversity? And Ed Miliband is seen as the quintessential environmentalist. Now, personally, I think Ed Miliband should go a lot further on a lot of things, but the idea that he's not fit to be Chancellor because he's attempted to pursue a net zero by 2030 strategy is strange. And Sharon Graham saying he's should not be Chancellor because of that and because of the potential for job losses, as she puts it. I just invite Sharon and anyone else to think for a moment of what they're saying there. There's a great deal of jobs to be created out of sustainable energy. There's a great deal of jobs to be created over manufacture of wind turbines, solar panels, etc., and of alternative gas sources, and indeed organic gas sources. There's an awful lot of issues we can do, and an awful lot of investment we can make to have less pollutive forms of energy generation, and also a vast number of jobs to be created by energy conservation, cladding, and retrofitting of properties. And so it was many years ago that under Mark Sawatka's leadership, his union produced a very good booklet called "A Million Jobs a Year from Opposing Climate Change." All those arguments are still there. And it seems that the Labour Party mentality at the moment is to run away from the issue and run away from the debate and simply lean in towards the nonsense of reform and others. And so Ed, I don't know, according to the Daily Mail this morning, they're going to say that Ed is now back in pole position to become Chancellor. I've no idea how they decide on this. Have you got any more up-to-date information?
I look at the prediction markets and they're just all over the place. It does seem like Ed Miliband is now the favourite. It's interesting because even when you see people who say they shouldn't hire Ed Miliband, say he's clearly very competent. He's clearly got an idea of what he wants to do. And Yvette Cooper would just be managed decline, but he should still pick Yvette Cooper. I find it all very strange.
I think with Ed, there would be more chance of pushing him in the direction of a taxation system that is fairer on the lowest paid, and do something about the 150 odd billionaires who own almost a quarter of the nation's wealth. We could start by taking the lowest paid out of taxation altogether, return to the principle of index linking of tax thresholds. At the moment, the index linking was taken away by Rachel Reeves, which means that the tax burden on the poorest people is going up. There's an awful lot of things that could be done that would make an awful lot of difference to the very lowest paid and poorest people in our society. And I would like to think that Ed would at least have a more open mind on this. Rachel Reeves just batted all that away and said, no, she's going to continue down this line. And the fiscal rules that they invented for themselves are fiscal rules that actually year on year increase the number of very poor people in our society. And whilst of course I welcome free school meals, that doesn't take every child out of poverty. There are still a very large number of children growing up in extreme poverty and hardship in our society, whilst the whole debate is now focused on increasing arms expenditure, pushed by Kemi Badenoch and the Tories and echoed by Al Cairns and John Healey and others, which keep on saying the country can't afford the burden of the welfare bill. Well, the burden of the welfare bill is personal independence payments. It is basic support for people going through poverty and hardship, and unemployment benefits. And what has happened to our society that we've decided that everybody that has quite rightfully claims benefits is somehow or other now a burden?
Let's talk about something different, which is a new book you've got coming out on a tribunal you did into Britain's complicity into the Gaza genocide. So could you sort of just explain what this book's about?
Yeah, thank you. I, like I'm sure yourself and many others, just been appalled and shocked by the way in which the genocide of the Palestinian people in Gaza has just gone on and on. 73,000 now recorded deaths. I went to the International Court of Justice hearing. I was invited to go by the South African government and went to it. And it was an amazing experience sitting there in the Peace Palace in The Hague, just hearing the presentation by South Africa and then casting my mind back to all the campaigns against apartheid. And South Africa, having shaken off the yoke of apartheid, then takes this case. Well done, South Africa. Their reward has been increased tariffs by the USA. And Britain has supplied arms to Israel throughout all of this. A number of us in Parliament have raised this day in, day out, the question of weapon supplies, parts for F-35 jets, and so on, and Britain's complicity through the overflying of Gaza and the sharing of security information with Israel and the use of the RAF base at Akrotiri. And so I introduced a private member's bill under the 10-minute rule procedure to set up an inquiry into the acts of genocide in Gaza. The bill got past that stage and was then blocked after that, and then fell after the end of that session. I've since reintroduced it as a tabled bill I put in last week, due to come up on September the 11th. But I also then asked, through our project, the Peace and Justice Project, to set up a Gaza tribunal, which we did. And the Gaza tribunal was held over 2 days last year in Church House in Westminster. We had 29 expert witnesses. 3 of us were assessors of it. We took all that evidence, and we've now, it was in public, and it was followed by very large numbers of people online. We're now publishing it in book form. It's coming out next week, and the book is the proceedings and all the evidence and witnesses' statements that were put there, also with introductory chapters by the 3 of us, but also a follow-up chapter by Sally Rooney on the whole concepts of genocide and the horror that goes with it. And this is a way of promoting discussion and debate. And so a good thing an incoming Prime Minister could do is recognise that Britain has been and is, I believe, complicit in acts of genocide. Knowingly being involved in acts of genocide by supplying weapons to the organisation, i.e. the IDF, that's committing those acts of genocide, actually adds with complicity. And so I think the very least the government could do is do what Gordon Brown did, which was to set up the Chilcot inquiry, and to do what the previous Tory government did, was set up inquiry into Falklands War. I think there needs to be an examination. How did we end up in a position that we're supplying weapons knowing they're going to be used to bomb hospitals and schools in Gaza? Serious question about the morality of British politics. So we're producing this book. We're arranging a lot of events around it, Edinburgh Festival, Bradford Festival, and a number of others, where we'll be taking that book to promote that debate and discussion. So we're pushing it out there because I think we need a serious debate about this.
Do you have any hope that the sort of UK government will change their stance over the next coming weeks and months?
I'm always hopeful because I'm fundamentally an optimistic person, and I had some rather bizarre answers to my endless questions about weapon supplies to Foreign Office ministers, one of which was when Hamish Falcon was trying to assure me that none of these weapons could possibly be used to kill Palestinian people in Gaza. I beg to differ, but at least the government has been pushed onto the back foot about weapon supplies, and the issue that needs to come out is, one, the continuation of the supply chain for the F-35 jets, 15% of components of which are made in Britain, and very seriously the question of RAF Akrotiri and the endless overflying of Gaza and the information collected from that overflying, which seems to me to have been sent to the IDF and assisted them in their bombing targets. These are very, very serious issues, and we are not going to give up on it and not going to be silent on it. And we're bringing it up again at the Peace and Justice Conference in September in London.
Jeremy Corbyn, thank you so much for joining me on Novara Media.
Thank you very much.